Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast. I know so many of you listening to this show love your local bar, your local restaurant, maybe your local hotel, and have so many fond memories of time in hospitality businesses. This is the podcast where we get to chat to the human beings behind the scenes of that industry. Maybe the chefs or the bakers or the coffee roasters or the gin distillers or the craft brewers or the entrepreneurs, but all doing an amazing job of making sure that hospitality stays interesting and the big, dull, formulaic brands do not take over our high street. Please enjoy the show. In this week's podcast, I am joining Andy Lennox, who has been an exceptionally busy boy. Andy started his career as a kitchen porter back in the day, peeling potatoes, but at only 21 years of age, he teamed up with a couple of friends and created Koh Thai, a restaurant in Boscombe, Dorset, offering authentic Thai cooking with a south of France style of service. And as Andy puts it, they knew literally nothing and learned on the trot, only realising 6 months in that perhaps a till system would be better than a piece of paper when relaying orders between the kitchen and the bar. But very, very quickly, the pace picked up into a gallop as Koh Thai took off and 11 more Kohs opened in Dorset, Hampshire and Somerset. It was great, but there were definitely growing pains, as you are going to discover, like the fact that the deal is never sealed until the signature is on the dotted line, particularly when big amounts of money are involved. But I join Andy 10 years on into his next concept, Zim Braai, all about earthy, smoky, slow-cooked oxtail, wild boar and potjies, bunny chows, curries in a bun and braais, barbecues that bring people together. I hope your mouth is watering, mine certainly is. Please enjoy this week's conversation. Andy Lennox, thank you so much for inviting me to your place, or at least agreeing when I kind of knocked on the door and hassled you and say, hey, can I come down and have a look? Really cool venue. Can you just explain to me where we are and how long you've been here?
So we're currently now sitting in Zim Braai, which is my new concept, so Southern African. We're basically sitting over in the corner, just kind of taking it all in. A nice, good kind of colour palette, quite earthy. You've got a really good daytime kind of look as well as in the evening, which obviously, it's really difficult to get that right, that daytime and that evening look. So I'm really, really happy with how it's come together so far.
Amazing. Congratulations. It looks awesome. It smells even better than it is. I wish I could describe the smell, but I guess it's that kind of barbecue, smoky
we've got a massive braai in the kitchen, and so basically a braai is essentially a big old barbecue, but it has kind of two meanings in Africa. So the first meaning basically being braai, so basically this big kind of barbecue where you're kind of cooking everything, but the other side of it is to braai essentially, and braai means a get together. So everyone gets around the braai, they go to a braai. It's like a braai, bringing braai. Everything about it is basically all this kind of get around the barbecue and just be with your friends and your family. So those are kind of the two things, and it's the heart of our kitchen basically. And there's all wood in there, so it's all kind of wood fired. 12-hour service. So basically we kind of like light it up at around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then that kind of goes all the way through till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So it's just, and that's that smell, that kind of like a really earthy kind of lovely wood smoke smell.
Yeah, with the imagery that's around and that kind of South African vibe, I could be transported away and be sat under the starlight and stuff like that, looking into each other's eyes.
Yeah, it's like Southern African basically. So we kind of like gone right. Well, we kind of started in South Africa, and then we kind of started bringing some other different areas in. So Mozambique, kind of Mauritius, Zanzibar, Tanzania, Congo. Our coffee's from Congo. So that kind of Southern African kind of vibe basically, where basically we've got a lot of our decoration has come over from Zimbabwe. It's come over from South Africa. So I've got a big old plane basically to bring it all over. I went out there, picked it all, and then they kind of all came over. So Zimbabwe basically being a kind of really eclectic place at the moment as well, and that kind of where obviously the name Zim's come from. So Zim Braai basically is a great little concept that kind of has allowed us to kind of really take from all over Southern Africa.
Amazing. Yeah, no, it's a really fresh idea. So I want to come back to the details behind this one, but also just to start with, to go on kind of the story and the journey into hospitality for you and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll come back very much specifically to this one. But it may actually answer this. So I know you got into the industry really young. You were sort of 21, I think, when you opened Koh Thai. What was before that? Had you travelled a lot? Is that where you've got Koh, you've got South African? Had you travelled a lot as a kid?
No,
when did you know you were going to go into this?
Yeah, well, I travelled a lot as a kid with the family. So we kind of went all over the world, especially with my dad's work and stuff like that. So obviously been a lot travelling. But actually, I started. I think my first ever hospitality job was a potato peeler in the local pub. Like basically a KP, and then basically when I went to university, I started kind of like running bars there and doing kind of bar work, and kind of was JCR president of my halls, and had like a little cards that basically got discounts for people and stuff like that. So I started kind of like that business kind of thing, around probably must have been 18 basically, as I just got to kind of university. Worked through there, kind of managed the bar there for a while, and then basically when I moved over to Bournemouth, and that's when I was kind of 21, just finished university, did history and archaeology, so that really helped me with the restaurant industry and set me up for life there. But actually, it was a really good experience university, and then basically after that, kind of came here and then started Koh. Worked in a couple of bars around here, print rooms, Branksome Beach, and then basically ended up opening Koh. So okay. 21.
Nice, good.
Yeah, 10 years ago now. So
good job you didn't stop at potato peeling. That wasn't the highlight of your hospitality destiny. There was more to be done.
I love being able to turn around to everyone and say, look, when you've got KPs that come in and they're 16 and they've just kind of like they're just starting their jobs or whatever, or they're 15 something, like everyone's just kind of coming in and they're just starting to, find out what they want to do in hospitality. It's a lovely feeling to be able to turn around and say, well, look, like, your CEO or the boss, the big boss, he was a KP. Like he's done it. He's worked his way up, and I've done every kind of aspect of the business now. So, whether that's bar work, whether that's waiting, whether that's KPing, whether that's kitchen, management, everything. So every single role that I ask any of my staff to do, I've done. Whether that's jumping in a bin basically to kind of like get the cardboard down, or whether that's cleaning up a toilet when it's all overflowed. Everything that I would expect my staff to do, I've done.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I was chatting to David Sachs about this on another podcast. Exactly that respect in the kitchen is key, isn't it? There's too many people who maybe come along and have that dream. They've always wanted to own a restaurant, always want to own a bar. I think you need to have kind of gone through it. You need to have seen what it's like on the coal face to really get the respect and buy-in from your team.
Yeah, because with the hospitality, it's long hours. It's long hours. It's hard work. There's a lot of fun there, and there's a lot of passion, and you need to be passionate about doing it. But everybody needs to understand that when you're in that kind of you're the trainee assistant manager and you're working the long hours and you're doing all the long stuff, and you kind of go, why am I doing this? The pay's not great. It's kind of, I don't understand why I'm doing it. And then you're kind of sitting there going, well, actually, yeah, but then look at the GM. He's done that. He's gone through that. And actually, no, look where he's on. He's good wage. He's been able to kind of work his hours. That's that really key to be able to turn around to people and say, well, look, if you do work hard, this is where you go. This is where you go. And I'm really kind of passionate about basically taking people who are young and then kind of training them through all the different motions of the business to get to where they want. I mean, when we'll go, I'm sure we're talking about Koh later, but when we were at Koh, we had 350 employees, and the vast majority of our management team had basically been taken from the floor. I think we had managers at GMs at 21. It was crazy. Most of my head office team were under 30.
Yeah, no, it was impressive. I think you have got, or you certainly did have, and I think I'm sure you'll continue to do so. A really good reputation for that kind of team development and training people fast, which I guess comes back to you starting at 21. That's a young age. So how did it happen so quickly? What was the inspiration behind Koh? And can you just explain how at 21 years old you ended up opening only a few hundred meters from me?
Yeah, no, it's crazy, isn't it, when you think back to it all? Yeah. I think what happened was that ultimately there was a couple of me and my other business partners, and we decided that we wanted to kind of do this kind of reimagine Thai, basically. Thai basically at the time traditionally was kind of very, very family-run, family kind of concept where, very traditional in the sense of their service style and their look and their feel. And ultimately at the time, 10 years ago, Thai was in a massive ascendancy. So it was kind of, it was let's take this and actually let's put it into a concept and actually, kind of refine it and polish it off and actually serve it to the British public, and then they can actually really, really, I don't know, understand it and find that it's an accessible concept. And that's essentially what I love doing, is just kind of creating concepts or putting things in front of people that they wouldn't expect normally to have, and actually they go, oh, actually I quite like this. So that's really, really keen. And with us, we started 21 and we didn't really, we didn't know anything. I knew nothing about accountancy, nothing about kind of finance. I knew how to serve a restaurant, I knew how to run a bar, but running a restaurant, and actually then the kind of two big things that really happen when you're running restaurants is you realize you're either running a restaurant or you're running a business. You can't run both. It's very difficult to kind of explain, but essentially running a restaurant is very different to running a business. You can run a restaurant and you can do well, but you may not have a second one. You may not have a third one. If you don't understand the concepts behind that business and what makes that business tick, really, really difficult. And I learned that on the trot, really. A lot of Google, a lot of books, a lot of trial by error, and really, really just went with, okay, well, actually, we shouldn't be using paper, we should be using tills. Where do we get tills? And it was very much like that. You think back 10 years now, we were, the first 6 months, I think, maybe even, probably 6 months, we had a piece of paper. We had a piece of paper that basically we took orders on, that kind of went to the kitchen one half, the other kitchen went to the bar staff, we didn't really have any kind of inkling or understanding of how to run our business at all. And that really was basically where I suppose came into my own a little bit, is where we actually started going, right, okay, how do I learn this? What do I need to do? I can't use Sage, so let me find a program that I can. So I found Xero, and I suppose Xero 10 years ago was quite new. Now everybody's using it, and it's like, well, I can understand this, so I started using that, and that was then and then it's everything else. And then we're like, well, okay, well, let's open another restaurant. Okay, how do we do that? We've got no money. I can't get a loan, and that was kind of, again, we had no cash when we first started Boscombe. Never really had any cash, to be fair, but then we did Bournemouth, and then it was like, okay, well, if we're going to do more, what do we do about this? How do we run a business that basically is going to be running and opening more restaurants? We started to access finance, which was great, but it's like, well, okay, but how do we train our staff? Like, how do we? And I need more managers. I don't want to just keep on employing managers. How do I make sure my managers are perfect? And this was where it's kind of snowballing into this big thing. And you're like, right, okay, well, I need trainee assistant managers. So I need to have a trainee manager in every single restaurant, basically training, ready for the next one, which was a big cost at the time, but it was kind of massively needed. And that's how we kind of expanded, was like, who were the best guys on the floor, who want to be management, where can we put them into a restaurant to train? But then also on the flip side, you're going back the other way and you're going, well, yeah, but I'm taking my best people off the floor. So then you're kind of like, well, okay, I need to train my front of house better. I need to have 3 of those guys wanting that training management thing. So it was, you go through the motions, you look back over the last 10 years, it was crazy the amount of, things we had to learn.
Yeah, and you fast-tracked that and condensed it incredibly, and we'll come back to the business aspect in a minute, because I'd like to explore that more. But just, I also want to start on the customer journey, because very quickly, like you say, you were trying to introduce something new. What was the customer response, and were you authentic Thai, or were you adjusting it for the kind of British market? How did that pan out?
No, I suppose we weren't authentic in the sense of, did I have all of my staff, were they dressed in Thai garb, and were they going swaddy carp, and, were they, being a traditional Thai server? No, we weren't. And we weren't, in any way. And that was quite, it was something we deliberately did. We wanted basically British service serving British people. You get that personality, you get that panache. They understand you. They understand customer service much more. So it was much more of a European service model. That kind of south of France. That's what I wanted. That south of France kind of server who really, really cared, but could also understand you and get that and understand where you might not understand the menu or whatever. But in the kitchen, very, very authentic, and it was we had like 85 Thais by the end, and generally speaking, I think we had like maybe 3 or 4 in the whole course of the history of Koh that weren't actually Thai, and we didn't really play. We kind of turned around and said, right, okay, well, can we do this in this format so that basically it's easier? So obviously the whole Thai tapas thing, But again, Thai tapas was a new concept in the name, but not a new concept in serving Thai food, because that's exactly how Thai food has always been served, which was quite hilarious in a lot of ways, because you're sitting there kind of going, well, yeah, we have called it Thai tapas, and Thai tapas is a really cool concept, and it's got really strong legs, but actually it's actually probably more authentic than going to a traditional Thai restaurant where they're serving a starter, main, and dessert. Because actually in Thailand, everybody just kind of you'll have mum, dad, brother and sister all cooking a dish in the kitchen, and then actually at the end of it, it's like all put down on the table and everyone just digs in. And actually, if you go to any of the restaurants over in Thailand, like the actual traditional kind of like on the street places, it's just, okay, what do you want? And everything just arrives as and when it does, and everyone just digs in, and everyone just shares. So that whole sharing concept basically was new to the UK, but not new to Thai. So yeah, Thai food, the authenticity in our kitchen, we were very kind of key that it had kind of three things really. That one, that basically we would serve it fiery, so we wouldn't dole down the flavors too much. Now, obviously, you're not going to have a beef spicy noodles in a Koh, like you'll have a beef spicy noodles at a Thai person's house. So it is a bit dulled down, but it was much, much, much more robust than a lot of places were doing at the time. We weren't going to, compromise on ingredients. So all of our ingredients were coming, in on a plane from Thailand. A lot of the kind of like the more Thai aspects of it, and we were going to be very, very key that we would have British front of house and British personality, and a really cool look and a really nice feel. But we'd have Thais in the kitchen.
Amazing. And it looked like the customers appreciated it. It seemed to take off from day one. Was that the case?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, it was one of those things where the first 6 months were kind of trial by error. I don't think we even had a menu when we first started. It literally was a piece of paper which we printed. I mean, and the funny thing is, my wife, in the first ever menus in Koh were designed and made in my flat by my wife, painstakingly cutting out the Kohs from the business cards and then sticking them onto pieces of cardboard and then sticking them onto strings and stuff like that. And that was amazing, actually. I mean, when you kind of think back to it, like it was painstakingly, like hundreds of lease menus. And we just printed off a menu. So that kind of first design was interesting, and how that developed. But the customer kind of just took to it to a certain extent, because it was in a really nice environment, and we'd really, really kind of gone with this kind of striking murals and this kind of dark kind of colour palette, and the browns and stuff like that, and lots of reds and oranges, and really tried to kind of make it moody and romantic. Obviously, the customer felt relaxed instantaneously. So straight away, basically, they were coming through that door, and it was very, very key to us that basically you walk through the door, you feel relaxed. That is the key part to us, and we had to overcome loads of different customers. I mean, I can reel off the different kinds of clientele. I remember having a Range Rover came over to us from Sandbanks. We're in Boscombe. We're kind of in the red light district. We're in this kind of area where basically no one's actually really, apart from you guys and a couple of other really good independents, just trying to kind of bring the area up. I mean, then we go back and talk about like BCIC and the Barg and all this kind of generation groups and stuff like that. And I remember them coming in. There was like 4 of them, and they came in and they're kind of looking around, and we're quite good at what we do. And at the time, we were really kind of like plying our trade, and they kind of walked in. We're kind of like, okay, first things first. It's that kind of like 60-second hello. All right, have we maintained eye contact? Have we said hello? Have we smiled? Have we said we're going to be with you? Yes, we're busy, but it doesn't matter. They've got eye contact, yeah. And then they're kind of looking around, going, oh, well, where's my table? Why haven't I been sat yet? And then they get sat and they sit down. They don't really understand the menu, and then one of our servers goes over to them and sits down next to them, and kind of goes, "Right, guys, how you doing? You all right? Can I guide you through the menu? And if there's any questions, let me know. And if not, I'll take you kind of your food order." And they're sitting there going, "Well, what is this person sitting next to me? Why aren't they not serving me? From above, kind of thing." And that kind of first, we always said we're like relaxed service, engaging service, high personality. Be really, really good at what we do, but be relaxed about it. Because I'm a you'll never find me in a Michelin star restaurant ever. You'll never find me in a highbrow restaurant, really. I mean, I dislike the service style. I'd much rather go and sit somewhere where I can relax and just be and be, rather than basically someone kind of like, "Sir, can I get you this? Sir, can I get you that? Sir, can I get you this?" So we've always been kind of like against that. And so anyway, these guys basically, they've ordered, and you could just see that something just kind of clicked in their head. Halfway through, well, not even halfway through, probably a quarter of the way through. And they go, "Oh, we don't have to be pretentious. We don't have to basically be kind of like, oh, we're so whatever, so Bournemouth. We can just relax." And they didn't leave until like midnight. They were absolutely, pissed by the time they left. They were a really, really good time. And those guys still come to me now, and they followed me around, and they come to all the restaurants. They absolutely love it. But it was just crazy that it took them, it's like breaking down barriers, and especially, and I think independents do very well, is breaking down those barriers of kind of like, guys, you do not need to, great service and great experience, doesn't come about by basically being, trying to be pretentious or trying to have kind of highbrow service. It comes around from personality, through your service, really, really understanding the customer. I'd rather have my staff not in your face, not there, but as soon as you want something, they've already know that what you want. They've already come over with the extra bottle of wine. And that's how it, you don't want obtrusive service, but you don't want to kind of have this service where, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think for me, it's the difference between. Thank you. It's just a fresh coffee. Your team, they're really good, aren't they? They just keep playing you with fresh coffees. You're going to be so wired by the end of this conversation.
I was saying earlier, I sleep like a baby.
It's true. Yeah, I don't. Unfortunately, I'm on the water because by this time of the day, that's it. Coffee and I stay awake. But yeah, no, I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I think it's the difference for me between customer service and hospitality. Customer service is just you get what you're given, and that they kind of maybe sometimes a highbrow restaurant feels to me a little bit too much about service. Hospitality for me is kind of what you do with your friends, and it is about that kind of like fire pit outside in the forest, and everybody kind of sits around, and you chew the fat, and you break bread, and you drink some wine or some beer, and the informality. Hospitality is how you make people feel. Customer service is what you do for them. So, no, I agree very much so. That's so then the speed, you went from Boscombe to Bournemouth fairly quickly into the town centre, and from then on in, seemed to grow really fast. Can you just explain to me, I suppose, going from 1 to 2, and then what was the trigger point where you went, did you always know this is going to turn into, however many it did, or when was the point when you went, right, here we go, we're on a roll? I
think from my point of view, basically, when we first started, we said 5 and 5 years. Now, whether that was overly ambitious at the time, or completely idiotic, and seeing as basically we then realised we didn't actually know how to run a restaurant. I said 5 and 5 because actually for me basically it was never about owning a restaurant. It was about owning a brand. It was about creating something special. And so you kind of had that first restaurant, Boscombe, and Boscombe always did well. But Bournemouth basically was a kind of, a game changer for us. We took a massive risk on Bournemouth. I mean, it took me a long time to persuade everybody that we were going to do it. Not that such a long time, we did it a year after, but in the sense of, it was a lot of arguments about getting there. But once we got there, we'd kind of basically remortgaged everything that we had. It's a difficult thing when you have a successful restaurant. So you've got one, and you kind of, actually, we've got a successful restaurant here. Then turning around to everybody and say, okay, we're going to roll the dice again. On the second one, and we're going to basically raise funds against that one, and we're going to literally just plough everything into this one. That was difficult to just to get everybody on board, but once we did get everyone on board and we said, right, we're doing it, I mean, it was a game changer for us.
It was a huge jump size wise, wasn't it? I mean, level of investment compared first one to second one must have been massive, presumably.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it, actually, because when you go back to it, they cost about the same because we had no money anyway. They cost about the same, and we picked up a good unit, had a lot of problems, but we were able to kind of jerry-rig them for a while until we had some more money. But we opened, the first month, I think we tripled our turnover. And that became a game changer. And that became a kind of, a game changer for us. We were in a whole new marketplace because actually, even though we'd hit the Bournemouth market with Boscombe, we weren't in Bournemouth. And then basically, after that, Southsea came along. And that was a really, really, really good site for us, again as well. And then basically we then did Bath, we did Bristol, we then came back here and we did Lilliput, we did Ringwood, then we went on and we...
don't worry, it's not an exam.
Yeah, well,
somebody's going to be fact checking.
Yeah.
So, but that bit then... I suppose funding really, isn't it? You know, how did you go once you had the two? You at that point proven concept. You've proven you can run much bigger venues. You've proven that the concept was good. The customers loved it. Was that the point when you went right? Okay, you know, here we go. And was that point where you needed to bring in external funding? Could you still wing it at that stage, or was it kind of like actually now we're going to need to get some money behind us?
Yeah, I mean, basically once we knew that we kind of proven concept and we kind of like were like, you know, actually it's ticked all the boxes. Even though at the time, talking about boxes, we didn't know those boxes were needing to be ticked. It was actually accessing finance, and I think I've only ever had one bank loan in the whole course of my hospitality career, I guess. And you know, I'm not going to say name the bank, but it was, you know, a small teeny tiny bank loan. It took me forever to get. They took charges against everything. And then they completely like hamstrung us basically to do anything. So it wasn't until we then came across FinCats and a great guy basically who kind of said, look, you know, we've got this new platform, very much like kind of crowdsourcing, but crowdsourcing on loans. And he was like, no, well, we're going to do this. And I think our first loan was funded in 8 minutes. And I think it was something like 450,000, you know, back, you know, and then we were onto this kind of, okay, we can access finance now. And that was then where we really started going.
So is that like the funding circle kind of style? Is it that concept?
So it's
not private investor.
It is. It's all private investors, but they're investing onto a platform to basically borrow money. They kind of bid interest rates essentially. And that kind of funded us out for most of our sites. And we then basically started to look at then kind of equity, trade deals, external investment, kind of a resetting of the shareholding and management really. Probably about 2014. So probably about 4 years in was when we kind of all started going, right, well, you know, some of my business partners wanted to leave. It was kind of, okay, well, how can we finance that to be able to make that happen? And, you know, I wanted to kind of go further. We were kind of at essentially 7 at the time, and I wanted to kind of double the company size really. And you know, I knew that we needed a lot more investment into our kind of systems and our kind of, you know, our office functions and our training functions, and you know, all of these other things. And so that's where that kind of started. I think we went to a couple of abortive processes. Very nearly did a trade deal with a brewery, which was a very, very good deal. But that kind of like fell away by the wayside literally on the day of signing, actually, which was just crazy.
This is where the brewery were going to fund your
expansion. The brewery were going to buy the whole business, and then basically I was staying on. So buying everybody, I was then staying on. With you know, skin in the game, and kind of, and then we were going to basically roll out the whole thing. And I think they went and bought like 26 hotels the next day instead of buying us, which was kind of like, you know, no,
literally on the day.
Yeah, you know, I went up there basically to kind of like, you know, finalize all of the final pieces of the deal. Yeah. And just kind of like, you know, go through all the motions. And, you know, we sat in a meeting in London, and they kind of just said like, Andy, I'm really sorry, but actually there's been a kind of change of heart. You know, nothing to do with you guys, nothing to do with us. Like these guys who I was talking to didn't even know there had been a change of heart. It's just a board somewhere basically decided they wanted to do something else. So that was kind of a kick in the teeth. And I think that was probably 2015. And I think what a lot of people don't understand as well is when you go into equity, and when you go into that kind of realms of, you know, high finance to a certain extent, it becomes a whole different ballgame. You know, business becomes completely different. And, you know, due diligence is something like, it's kind of, you know, it's a very, very painful process you go through. You know, it's a lot of documentation. You know, it's a lot of basically kind of, you know, it's like 11 o'clock nights for like, you know, however long. So when that kind of doesn't fall off, you've obviously also spent a lot of money on that as well. You know, that's difficult. So you're basically you back up and okay, bring the team together again. Don't worry about it. Let's go and find another one. And we did. We went on and we carried on that. But due diligence is a painful process. So if you kind of only ever really want to do it, you know, 2 or 3 times in your lifetime. I've done it 3 times. it's painful.
So going through it with that first one, though, presumably that one fell through, but you'd done a lot of the work. So I guess it was presumably a faster process. You've done a lot of learning, went out again, and your primary objective at that point then is to raise more money to expand quicker. But rather than a repayment, this is kind of looking at equity. So just a different approach.
Primary objective is essentially that. It's basically raise more money to basically put more money into the business. Conduct kind of MBO, management buyout, and essentially then basically roll out the company and see where it goes really. And also basically it's another part of a business that you kind of have to do. It's like a lot of people basically kind of say like, Andy, have you done a lot in business and all this kind of stuff? And there's still so much for me to do, which I haven't done. But I mean, I think it was someone said basically, they turned around and said, well, actually, apart from a listing on kind of the AIM and the stock exchange, you've been through a lot of it. And it's true. But that's what we were trying to aim for. And then basically, the kind of, I think we started that process at the beginning of 2015. So after this kind of this trade deal had fallen through. And again, that's it's a long process because you weren't just talking to one person then. It was then in a kind of process of like we're talking to 20 or 30 equity firms. And that's kind of like I'm in London like every single day, basically, essentially selling my wares. Then you're basically, so you go for this process, you do kind of like, right, okay, there's 30 or 40 people who are interested. Then that's down to kind of like, oh, actually there's 20 people interested. And then it's kind of like, there's 10 people that have made an offer. And then it's down to like, okay, well, we've accepted 3. And then it's kind of due diligence for 3 people. And then it's okay, we've actually gone down to 2. And then it's like, we picked 1. And then, then that's gone. And it was really, really, really good. And we started that kind of concept basically of, we did the MBO, we raised the money, and we started going down that route. And then basically after that point, we're now mid 2016. And then we opened a couple more restaurants, or we were opening. It was a very busy year, 2015. I think we opened 4 restaurants, did due diligence on kind of 2 different deals, and opened basically, completely put in every single system in the company. It was one of those years where it's just kind of like there's so much going on. I think it was a year we turned around and said we're not doing Koh Lounge on the beach this year, because we were just like we just do not have the bandwidth or the manpower or the will to be able to do it again with all of this going on. And then basically we then did a merger, and by this point I'm getting to the stage where we're kind of 10 years in now. My options are coming up. It's kind of I've had this concept which we're sitting in now in my head since 2013, 2014, and I'm kind of getting a little bit itchy feet at the time. Kind of, I want to do new stuff. I want to do other things, equity and kind of finance and PE houses. I think everybody should experience it at some point, because I think it is actually, it makes you a much better manager, a much better businessman in a lot of ways. I mean, as your business gets bigger, there are more and more rules which you have to follow, and there are more and more things that basically need to be done. And so it is a good experience because it makes you very good. We set this business up now at Zim, on the back of essentially 10 years of Kohs. So you can imagine the kind of systems and what we're putting in place now here is mental, for the size of the business. But actually, it's kind of like, we're going to be auditors in year 1. So I'm going to audit our accounts in year 1, which is mental, really. So that, I mean, if you kind of get that's where. Yeah. So
I think it's fascinating, and I think that the difference then between what you started in hospitality and the guys in the Range Rovers and kind of looking after them to what you end up doing, which is being in London every day and negotiating deals and getting equity. Clearly, the roles are almost kind of. The link between them are almost indescribable. There's such a big change. Did you enjoy one more than the other, or did it just feel like a?
I don't know, because I really enjoy both, and I put in quite a lot of layers into the business. not to basically keep myself away from the customer, to allow myself to be nearer the customer to a lot of it, to a certain extent. We had lots of restaurants, but I put lots of management in underneath, above those people, so that everything's being reported to me. So I'm still getting everything. So I've always wanted to be close to the customer, and I'm actually really enjoying being here at the moment, because I'm literally, we're in a restaurant right now. There's some customers sitting over in the corner, and it's really nice basically being really close to it. And there's so many old faces that are coming in. At the moment, which is mental. Coming in, it's like, oh, hey, how you doing? You're right. Guys from Boston, people who are basically I haven't seen for years. But I've enjoyed both, I have to say. I really loved both sides of things. I think it's a completely different. It's a completely different thing. I love the customer, and I love basically that customer service, and I love being there. And actually, a lot of people have seen me run nights, which I haven't run in years here. And it's kind of like, and that's really, really good fun. And I have and it's really enjoyable. But the business side of it is also brilliant. But I think you have to be really, really careful not to lose sight of what actually makes your business. And what makes your business is your customer, and your food, and your service, and your atmosphere. And every single manual or every single thing we've ever put in is basically following that mantra. It's like, these are the guys, this is where you make your money. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing over in London, this is where you make your money. This is where all your customers, basically, if they're not happy, then your whole business is not happy. So it's really key not to lose that. And I think that's why we put in so many structures in place to basically we had that trainee manager, we had that, that customer service manager who basically responded to every single review, which I would then get a report on every single day. And so it was really trying to keep as close as you can, but also separate. But then you have to separate as well, which is the crazy thing as well. Because in business, then you, as you're getting bigger, you then have to start separating yourself from the different things, because otherwise, basically, you can't control it all. So it is, but both of them, everyone should experience both, really, if they can. And I'm doing quite a lot of consultancy work now, and mentoring and stuff like that, which is really, really good fun, because actually I'm able to kind of turn around to these people and say, look, oh, I did that. And I mean, I've done more things wrong than I've done right, definitely. And it's really nice being able to turn around to these people and say, well, actually, if you do this, this is where it's going to lead. And I did it this way and it didn't work. But if you do it this way, I now know that that's the way to go. So that's quite fun.
Fascinating, the journey. And then just before we come out of Koh, then presumably, you've got your finance, the co-founders have left the business. I presume that the planned trajectory was to continue that journey to open more. Was there a trigger where you went, actually opening more Kohs is not the answer? And I haven't heard of any opening for a while. Was there a decision to actually pause that expansion process?
Yeah, so we did a merger. So after we'd done the main kind of MBO, we then did a merger with some steakhouse restaurants, so Buenos Aires. Then basically a merger happened, and ultimately the decision then was to focus on bringing the Buenos Aires sites up to the same kind of level. So we kind of had 13, 14, they had 6, so it's kind of like, I'll get them to 12. And by that point it was kind of like, well, yeah, but I want to expand as well, and I want to keep on going with this, and we haven't got that much more time with this. We've got to keep on pushing this now. And so ultimately, it got to that stage where basically it kind of went, right, you know what, I've learned so much, and ultimately I've always wanted to basically go back and own my own business in full, which is like we have now. It's really, really kind of, it's quite special, to be able to make those decisions as and when you want them and how you want them. For me, basically my mantra's always been this kind of atmosphere, service, customer value. To be able to kind of go really, really focus in on that is really, really important to me.
So you're expecting to see Koh continue to open more though?
I'm sure it will. Yeah, I'm sure it will. There's no reason why it shouldn't. I'm sure it will continue. But I think from their point of view, they want to basically, bring that Buenos Aires, up to a certain level, potentially buy another one, and build a kind of more of a restaurant group. And I'm sure there'll be more Kohs. Yeah, definitely. Why wouldn't there be? I mean, they're still doing well. The food, the atmosphere, the service is, they stick to the core principles. There's nothing wrong with the brand at all. So, but I think for me, it's about basically wanting to. I mean, I've got 3 other brands I want to launch as well. I've got to that stage where I've got these little ideas which I want to do, and I want to be able to do different things and play with stuff. And I wanted to be able to go and consult. And I've been offered loads and loads of kind of like, directorships and non-execs over the years. And it's kind of like, you're not allowed to do that when you're in equity, because it's very much you're on, you're in it with this kind of brand. And for me, I wanted to be able to do different things. And I'm at the moment, I'm kind of doing 3 or 4 different consultancies on top of doing Zim as well. So and that's really exciting. And actually, I'm doing some stuff with my family, which is quite nice. And I'm doing some stuff with like some of my mates, and being able to kind of put some money into like other different areas is actually really cool. So.
Well, welcome back to the independent owner. So, have you noticed a change? It seems to be in the last couple of years that the sort of VC-backed bubble a little bit has burst in some ways. In the fact a number of big brands have either stopped their expansion, and I'm thinking of kind of Byron and Carluccio's and Jamie's and all these guys who either stopped expanding or have actually contracted. Any thoughts on why? Have you noticed a difference coming back into the sector now, I suppose, as an independent and how it was kind of 10 years ago? And do you think any of those changes over the last decade are the reasons why that whole sector seems to be having a bit of a pause?
Well, we don't do takeaway. You might have noticed. I mean, the brand here does not do takeaway, and potentially will never do takeaway. That's one of the big things. It's one of the big things that we had to cater with a Koh a lot. People expected Thai as a takeaway. They don't expect Southern African as a takeaway, and you don't make any money on takeaway. And I think this is. It's a real common myth, isn't it? It's like, delivery, basically, and all of these, Just Eat and everything like that. It's kind of sitting there going, you know what, these guys, they're really helping the independent out. They're really helping all these people out. And they're not in any way, shape or form, by a country mile. I mean, if you're basically saying, well, I need to sell my food at 70% to make money, or to even break even, let's be honest, and then Deliveroo are coming in and say, well, I'm going to take 33% of that. How can a business make money? So obviously one is takeaway, and I think that is, the Byron model. The reason Byron really, really went was because they built their business on the base of takeaway. On the basis of the fact they had their restaurants, but on the basis of the fact they could also do their burgers. And then Deliveroo came in and basically just completely killed them. And they just weren't set up. They weren't ready for it. And then you've got the likes of Carluccio, which couldn't really ever grapple with that takeaway. So that, it's been difficult for everyone. And I think takeaway is one of the big ones. I think the VC-backed system, they expect too much. And they want, it's this, because they're backed by shareholders at the end of the day, and they've got to pay interest rates. And it's not anybody's fault as such, but basically they want more and more profit every year, and they want it on time. And when a business is basically facing kind of a massive, as an industry, we're facing massive food pressures. I've just had a 5% increase on my wine, last week. And you're sitting there kind of going, okay, guys, that's a lot. Okay, that's Brexit, and you can argue that basically it's the duty and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a price increase. It doesn't matter the reason. And I think the customer wants more. It expects more. It wants a better experience, which we should be giving, by the way. But they want all of that, but they want it at a couple of years ago's prices, and then they want to basically bring in the discounts, and they want to basically be able to come here. You look at the likes of Pizza Express now. You don't see that many discounts anymore. You look at kind of like Prezzo and stuff like that, and they're all still doing their Groupons and stuff like that. But Pizza Express, they got their internal stuff, but they're starting to kind of pull themselves away. I only say Pizza Express because I was in there earlier, because actually, ultimately, I think a good chain in the right place is good. Pizza Express for me, for example, I do like, it's got, I wouldn't go there for dinner, but I'll take my kid there because they do it really well. But ultimately, I think for independents, there's a lot to play for now, because the chains they are wobbling. And you can pretty much pick up any unit anywhere, really, now. Let's be honest. Landlords are wobbling, so that's, that's starting to help people as well. And so I think, you've got this kind of takeaway thing that has hurt. And ultimately, you can't fight a business that's willing to lose 10 million a month. It's just impossible to fight that. It's kind of like, well, okay, but you just lost, and and then raised 220 million at the end of losing 10 million a month. It's just mental. So I think that on the one side you've got takeaway. I think on the other side you've got these kind of food pressures, and the expectation of the customer, they want more and they want better, but they want it at least the same or less price, is very, very difficult to deliver. So I think that's one thing. And, ultimately, basically, then you've got rising costs in employees. I mean, we pay, pretty much living wage here. If you're fully trained, Zim member of staff here, you're kind of on $8.75, which is bloody good. And actually, ultimately, a lot of people I know, would end up actually getting paid less. So this kind of what annoys me a lot, and I know this annoys you, but this idea that hospitality is not a career really annoys me, because actually you can get paid some really good money in hospitality if you're in the right place at the right time. So I think that's hurting, and that is, I think there is a lot of this. The customer needs to start to understand the cost pressures that are affecting a business, and as you say, kind of walk where, go down to that local independent and eat there, but also understand that basically it's not just the independent. There's, everybody is facing cost pressures. So all of this stuff going on, like all the wine and, all of our food costs is going through the roof, is affecting everything.
Yeah. And I think the challenge with trying to offer that, you've got the deep pockets of the likes of Deliveroo and Uber who have, $500 million of investment from the USA coming in and competing. But again, you often get the VCs who have got so many units that a few loss-making units in a town, chucking in some vouchers, discounting isn't going to kill them because they're looking at the group position. And my concern is always, the impact on those few kind of independent restaurants that are nearby. It does make it more challenging when the customer expectation is that they can buy their dinner, they can feed two people for a tenner with a bottle of wine, and the guy around the corner is going, you really can't. The margins are super tight. And then VAT as well, I think, in the fact that, you go into a supermarket and buy the ingredients and make a sandwich and there's no VAT, and go into a cafe around the corner and all of a sudden it's 20% more, and the consumer's got no idea.
That for me is probably the biggest. I mean, because ultimately you asked basically what did I think had changed out of those things. I mean, apart from takeaway, all of the other things in the industry have always been the same. Food pressures, food prices always go up. I think a lot of people blame that and kind of like focus on that and go, food pressures, we need to put our prices because of this. And I think actually it's like, well, just run your business better. However, on the flip side of that, VAT, that is the biggest difference. So ultimately, when I first entered the market, VAT was 15%. It's now 20%. And I think VAT at 15%, I mean, if not less, we're the highest in Europe. It's mental. VAT is the biggest killer of our businesses because ultimately it's not a fair playing field. Not only do we have the whole cafe culture where basically, you're going in there and you're paying an extra 20%, and in the supermarket you're not. Also, we're buying in food, which we don't pay VAT on because it's generally dry stock, but then we're having to sell it. So you're not getting the benefit of what a lot of other businesses get when they pay VAT, is that they get to claim it back as well. So actually, for an industry, is the most ridiculous thing ever. Yeah. And it is the biggest, I think. That alongside, PAYE and stuff like that. I think generally speaking, you make your employees work. However you need to make it work, you'll make that work. But VAT is a cost, which basically you're paying it. It doesn't matter what you do. You can't change it. They're militant.
It's that tax on revenue rather than tax on profit, I suppose, challenge, and the fact that food
make any profits.
Exactly. And maybe food was it's not a luxury. There's a reason. Luckily, we don't pay VAT on food in the supermarkets. Is that we all need food every day to live in the same way that energy is at least 5%. So I think even if we have VAT, at least make it the lower rate, because the way that we live now is you can pop into a cafe for lunch, or you can pick up some takeaway food on the way home, or pop into a restaurant, and that's just the way we live. So whereas it used to be that you went out and ate once, when I was a kid, my parents would go out once a quarter and dress up really nice and stuff. Now it's part of the way we live, and it actually makes us more productive. The kind of GDP kind of thing is we're all more productive if we can grab and go our food, and I think it's outdated. I think the fact that you're treated as VAT as a luxury and charging it at 20% is outdated. It's not the way we live.
Well,
so if you could reduce that,
you look at basically like a sandwich, for example. Go to Marks and Spencer's, a sandwich, £3.50, £4, something like that now. Buy a glass, get some water and a bag of crisps. You spent a £5, but you're still expected to basically be able to come into a restaurant and buy a sandwich for £7, £6.50, and have it served for you. and have free water and be doing all the other things with it, and then you're not paying VAT. So it's mental.
It's a challenge. Okay, so coming back into the business, you mentioned that you'd had this concept since 2013, 2014. So, here we are back in Zim Braai land. Koh is gone. Where did that inspiration come from? Were you travelling? Was it a eureka moment? Did you do a lot of research?
It's a weird old one, actually. I mean, because I actually didn't realise that I did do it in 2013. But funnily enough, actually, it was my brother-in-law and my brother both turned around to me on separate occasions and go, no. Do you remember, basically, you were talking about that at your engagement party? And I was like, no, I wasn't. Yeah, you were. You were massively engaged with. I've got a couple of Zimbabwean friends, and we were all chatting about basically, Zim and all this kind of stuff. And I love the name. I love that Zim. You can tell Koh, Zim. 3-letter words work for me really well. Koh Thai, Zim Braai. It kind of all
rhymes.
It all rhymes. Yeah. And actually, you look at my kind of my little black book of all my other concepts. They all kind of like, they all go down the line.
I'm going to start guessing some.
Yeah. So I was back there, and then basically my brother then gave me it was my mother. She gave me a piece of paper which had Zim written on it, designed on a little restaurant, signed by me back in 2014. So obviously I've been thinking about it for a while, but I mean the amount of concepts that have gone through my mind have been, but then ultimately I went out to SA and went over and kind of experienced some of the food over there. A couple of my mates over here have been doing some braais, and so I was kind of like really excited about that, and I was trying to look for a healthy, fresh kind of concept, which you're cooking something basically. I mean, with a braai, it's good healthy food, really, when you think about it. I mean, you're not cooking with loads of oil. There's not loads of fat. It's on a braai, so you're getting this really kind of caramelized, blackened kind of food, but really soft and supple on the inside. So it's really, really nice, and you're getting really good ingredients in there. But that wasn't enough, because the braai, whilst was really good, not everybody wants to have barbecued food all the time. It doesn't work. And it was then I came across the potjies, which was like these little cast iron potjies pots, and then it was like stews and curries, and then I was like, you remember when we were younger, like you're always going to have a casserole, right? Well, that's just a stew. And so we've got this wild boar potjie, and then we've got these lamb potjies, and we've got Zimbabwean dovies, which is kind of like this peanut based and spinach kind of really good, lovely kind of like mixed stew, and loads of chicken and stuff like that. And so that kind of brought a whole new dimension to it. So I'm going, okay, well, on the one hand I've got these beautiful potjies. On the other hand, I've got this amazing braai which can give me some amazing steaks, and it can also give me some like harissa chickens, and it can give me like salmon and sea bass and all this kind of stuff. So I can do anything on a braai. And I've got all the potjies, so I can do. And so I've got the two sides. Then I've got these salads which are amazing. They've got some really cool desserts. I've then got an amazing array of wine. So all kind of started.
Is all the wine South African though?
Not all of it. Basically 70% of the list is.
Okay.
I still wanted to have. I still wanted to have a nice Toscano on there. I still wanted to have, Pinot Grigio. Even actually, to be fair, although that one is actually from SA. But so we've got loads of different wines, but 70% of the list is SA, Swaziland, Stellenbosch, kind of stuff like that. And sorry, I sat back. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I wanted to create this concept, and I had the kind of name Zim. So we had the braai, we had the potjie. I had some mates basically who were South African. I had some mates who were Zimbabwean. I've been out there. Everything was kind of coming into place, and I remember going to there was a restaurant over in SA, which I sat down and I ordered loads of potjies, and I said, look, actually, this is crap. And I was eating it, and I was just like, this is not, it's not good food. And it was in a kind of like, the equivalent of our kind of like BH2, it was all the chains. But the concept was brilliant. I was sitting there going, potjies, braai, and so I then started really going into the recipes and really looking at different people and kind of like gathering different ideas. And that's where it was born, really. I love the earthiness to it. I wanted a concept that could work in the daytime and in the evening. So our brunch menu is, really awesome. You've got bunny chow for lunch as well. But we've then done a take for our bunny chow, which is essentially kind of, so a bunny chow is,
I was just about to ask that question.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah.
Read my eyes.
Yeah, no, I now have a cheat sheet in the restaurant, but a bunny chow basically is a kind of it's a curry basically over bread or in bread. So traditionally, basically served in a kind of half a loaf, and then basically the curry's on the top. They cut out the top, they put the lid back on the top of the loaf, and then basically you kind of just dig in. It's a really good fast food. We serve it over a cob here.
I've got a friend from Yorkshire. I think he'd love that. Anything in a bun.
Yeah, well, it's like
curry in a bun. It's his dream.
Well, it's
his
like,
dream night
you
out.
have like a Yorkshire pudding, right? You know, we love Yorkshire puddings. It's essentially basically bread with gravy and bread with curry, bread with stews. But then we do a kind of take on that with a brunch where we do a kind of scrambled egg and bunny chow with smoked salmon and stuff like that. So there's some really cool things you can do. It's really accessible. You've got kind of braais, which are kind of like grilled sandwiches, which we have at lunch. You've got shakalaka, which is kind of like a tomato based relish ratatouille, like really spicy. There's just so much.
Have you noticed a lot of change in, we're just coming off the back of veganary and dry January and all that kind of stuff, but have you noticed a change in particularly I suppose the kind of the plant-based and the health conscious and all that kind of stuff compared to a decade ago? Is that a real thing, or is that a myth?
As I say to you, fresh and healthy, that's however much I love Thai, it's not exactly the most healthy food in the world, even though people do think it is. It's not the healthiest food in the world, and I wanted to find something that actually was good for you, healthy food, and stews and meats and fish and vegetables are good for you food, but they're healthy for you, and if you're doing it in the right way, it's so important now. I mean, veganism, don't get me wrong, allergens, again, you talk about another problem facing the industry, allergens. It's just mental. However much basically I find, because the legislation is moving all the time, you just don't know where you are at or what you're meant to be doing. And, you follow the kind of EHO rules and you have your allergen books and you have all your allergen stuff. And then 5 minutes later, someone's changed something and they actually want more. The amount of different knives you have in a kitchen now for allergens. The cost to a business is mammoth.
I think I was in a restaurant the other day and literally every dish had sulfuric acid written next to it, and I was like, when did that become a selling point for a dish? But literally, you do start, people obviously interpret the rules in different ways. But yeah, if you list every
places in London now which are turning around and saying they won't save you.
Right, that's the easiest
if
way.
You've got an allergen, I'm sorry.
The best way is we're just going to stop selling food.
No, honestly, you either sign a disclaimer and you say basically whatever you eat is, if you die, it's
That's always been
fault.
oysters for me as well. I've always thought you should sign a disclaimer if you eat oysters. It's like oyster roulette sometimes. Like, there's nothing we can do.
Which way am I going to go? But it is really important, and it's one of those things that basically obviously a lot more people are suffering from allergens. So obviously that does need to be sorted. But yeah, veganism, gluten-free, all of this, businesses have to understand as well. A very cautionary point. Businesses have to understand how important it is. We are militant here. You even look around the restaurant now and there's like little signs everywhere, basically like, ask a server if you've got a food allergy. All of the staff are trained. Everybody's basically, goes through a compliance.
And that's the good side of it, I guess.
Which it is. But a lot of people basically potentially don't understand a lot, and especially for an independent. If you ask about what is different, I've come from that kind of, code where we've gone through all the motions, and you've got to the much more kind of compliantary kind of, regulatory kind of part of a business. An independent's not there yet. No. It's like the whole kind of prep manger thing where basically they used every single store as a sandwich store, so they didn't have to do the labelling. It's a very important thing for people to basically get onto, and every time I advise anybody at the moment, the first thing I say is, I want to see your allergen book. Have you done it? And they're like, oh, yeah. It's like, what? I'm going to show it to me. No, it's not good enough. Go and do it again. It's really important.
Yeah, and it is a shame when the rules and the regs get in the way of kind of hospitality. It's a shame when the government regulate to the point where you've got to list every single ingredient on a dish, because chef will be in the kitchen and he'll be tasting a dish and he'll be going, I need to chuck a little bit more sugar or a little bit more salt, or it needs a little bit of this. And when you're trying to, it'd be really a shame if it becomes so formulaic and dull that unless you know the exact number of grams of salt in a dish or the exact percentage, that chef can't literally just kind of taste it and go, no, it needs a little bit more this or it needs a little bit more that. I'm going to put a little bit more vinegar in. I do get concerned that we just all end up dying of boredom because we're so formulaic. But anyway, we haven't got time, Andy, to go into all of that. This time round again, as you know, I suppose compared to 10 years ago, any advice for hospitality has a pretty bad reputation for kind of family life, life balance, working weekends, working nights. Obviously, you were 21, you know, young and free, and
no,
did it the first time.
But even at 21.
But now you've, you know, married with kids and stuff. What do you say to people who want to go into hospitality, want to work in the industry, but also kind of want to have a family and want to you know, have a holiday?
I think it's totally doable. I mean, I was with my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, but before Koh even started, you know, and you find a way of making that work. And yeah, it's stressful at times, and you know, but you know, my wife understands that I have to be, you know, at work when I need to be at work, and you know, but then I'm also with the kids when I need to be with the kids. And you know, I've got two kids now who I absolutely adore. I've got a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old, and it hasn't stopped me running a business, and it hasn't stopped me basically, you know, doing hospitality. And I don't think I think ultimately with all these things, it's all about being proactive about, you know, how do you put it? I mean, I've got staff basically, or had staff who sit there and kind of go, oh, I can't do hospitality because, you know, I never get any time off, or I'm always working too hard, or, you know, and you're sitting there going, well, yeah, but you're a GM. And if you actually just kind of took a little bit more proactive approach to your structure of your working week, and actually gone, you know what, I'm going to basically make sure that I do finish all of this on Monday, and then I'm going to structure my 2 days off. You know, I always found the time to have my 2 days off, or to have time off. I just think it's about structure, and it's being about proactive. Yeah. I mean, I've been very militant about a lot of things, but ultimately at the end of the day, you know, I own the business, I suppose. So it's always been, we've got to make it work. It has to work. So it's not just, you know, oh, I'm going to work, but I think you can do it. I think there's a good career path for it. And, you know, if you get to the right place, it is hard in the middle. It is hard in the middle, where you kind of like to be in the trainee manager. That's always going to be difficult. But if you excel at it, then you won't be there for very long, if you get what I mean. So
no, I do. I think the you know, for me, the big exciting thing about this industry is that it's full of creatives. You don't need to be particularly academic. You don't need to be a mathematician. You don't need to have done, you know, hugely well in the conformist, put your hand up, sit in a line kind of education system that we've got. If you can look someone in the eye, have a bit of charisma, fundamentally be a good human, and you like other human beings, the speed that you can be developed in this industry, I think, is brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
Really fast.
And I think I've got a lot of chefs. I mean, I'm dyslexic, and you know, always have been, obviously. You learned how to spell entrepreneur very, very recently. You know, but you know,
not many people to be. I don't think that's a classification for being dyslexic. I don't think nobody can spell entrepreneur.
Yeah, but most of my chefs are dyslexic. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things where like a lot of creatives here, because ultimately it's somewhere where they can go, where they can kind of explore themselves as well in hospitality. I think it's an interesting one.
And whilst we're on the subject of hopefully inspiring other people to come into what fundamentally, I know you love it as an industry, I love it as an industry, although I see its challenges and I think it's going through a really kind of interesting period at the moment. It's fundamentally brilliant, you know, compared to being sat in an office behind a screen. You know, it's a really good, buzzy, vibrant environment. Do you ever hear any advice though to people, either, you know, to managers or to people who are looking up at setting their own business? Do you ever hear advice which you think that's just rubbish, you know, that literally is garbage? Anything that springs to mind where you kind of end up stepping in and you can't help yourself and you go, don't listen to that?
Oh no, nothing that springs to mind. But I mean, I think for me, I do quite a lot of mentoring now, as I say, and I do lots of consultancy and stuff like that. And you know, time and time again, basically people go, oh, I want to go and set up my own business, I want to go and set up my own restaurant, and it's like, it's easy, you know, and it's not. And if you set up a restaurant, basically, and you're a chef, you know, let's be honest, you're going to have a really difficult time of it. And I think, I can't think of anything that springs to mind right now that basically is kind of like absolute crap. But there is a lot of it out there.
Why specifically if you're a chef?
Because I think basically you're passionate about your food, and you're passionate about basically cooking, and you're passionate about that. You just don't have a clue about what the cost of all of that is. And more often than not, basically, you know, I mean, I sit there and, you know, my chefs basically, you know, will, you know, with our first ever menu that we will have or had here, you know, oh guys, it's absolutely, you know, this is amazing. And I'm saying, yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna have to sell it at 40 quid just to make any money. And I think that's very, very key. I mean, people just don't understand. And that's for me, is people do not understand how much money you actually make in hospitality. I think a lot of people think we make a fortune. You know, if you make, you know, 8p in a pound, you're doing well. You know,
Very
10p in a pound.
In the good old days.
In the good old days, yeah. And ultimately, you know, there's so many failures out there, which is just because of bad practice rather than, you know, just not knowing what to look for. You know, their wages are running at 45-50%. You know, their food margins running at 60%. You know, there's more drink going out the door than they're actually buying in.
Friends at the end of the bar.
Friends at the end of the bar. You know,
no
I mean,
problem.
I pay to come to my own restaurants. You know, just to cover that cost, and also because I don't want anyone to ever think that they can just come in and have a free meal. You know, although lots of people do, but no, and ultimately, you know, understanding your OPEX and understanding all of your kind of like your running costs and, you know, your rental and how much that really should be of your turnover. And there's so much. And I think people go into this industry sometimes and they're kind of, oh, well, I've got loads of money or I've got some money and I just kind of buy a restaurant and I'm just going to open up and I'm going to cook really good food, and then they're kind of like surprised a year, 2 years down the line with like, oh well, I'm going to have to close it, and it's kind of like, yeah, but you cooked great food and it was fantastic, mate, but you weren't making any money. And then you didn't pay your VAT. And then
you presume you are making a fortune.
Yeah, and you presume you are, then you get your VAT
and then the VAT bill comes, and you go.
And again, it's, you know, it's massive. You know, you sit there and you kind of like, and then they run up all these debts because you haven't paid all of these things, and you just haven't really been. There's no control, and I think that's really, you know, for me, I'm very much about control, about making sure that every line we understand and is wrecked, but then I think that a lot of that is from the 10 years of, you know, of the business.
And I think that's what we do need to learn. You know, that independent hospitality sector that I believe so passionately about has to understand it's got to kind of be able to compete. It's got to be able to get the systems, the efficiency, know the numbers. It's got to get all that in line to survive. Otherwise, the big guys will always do that better.
Yeah, and it's not a lot of numbers. It's just understanding those numbers.
Yeah,
you know?
very much so.
I mean, especially when you're running a long restaurant. I mean, you sit there. I mean, and not in a horrible way, but you know, we're running one restaurant now. You know, it's kind of like, you know, there's a lot, but it's very, very easy to understand where we are. You know, that's quite quick. You know, the stuff that we're putting into the business is really hard work, because you're putting in 10 years of, like, you know, experience into a restaurant to make sure it's perfect before you roll it out, which obviously is, you know the kind of the aim, but understanding those kind of 5 or 6 criteria and understand that basically, you know, that 20% that you're making has to basically go into another bank account, and it has to go to the VAT man, and all this kind of stuff is just, independents have to understand it, because if they don't, they can't fight.
Yeah, no, it's true. So you've mentioned it there, and when's the next one? How many? 8.5 weeks in? I know how fast you move, how itchy your feet are. You don't tell me it's already being built.
It's not already being built. It's under negotiation. So we've got like 2 under negotiation at the moment. So we're just kind of like just playing about.
Locally?
Yeah, one's local. One's a little bit far afield, but I'm still going to kind of keep around this area. I want to kind of, we kind of said basically, you know, we wanted to get our team in place and get that right. That's nearly there. We kind of drew a line in the sand and said basically all of our compliant regulatory stuff had to be in by the end of February. By the end of February, which is basically nearly there now. We wanted to get three periods of kind of management information under our belt to kind of see, like, you know, are we actually hitting what we want to be hitting? And that's kind of like, that's on course. And so I wanted to get those things kind of done first. We kind of said we're not going to do anything until that's ready. But yeah, no, I mean, it's ticking the right boxes. People are loving it. You know, it's going to be something I will roll out.
So where do people go to find out more, either about you or about Zim Braai?
About me, just search on Google and see what you can find.
Only good stuff.
Yeah, only good stuff. But yeah, no, I did zim-braai.co.uk.
Okay.
BRAAI. And that's basically where all of our stuff is on there. You know, I've got my own consultancy firm, as I've said. That's Lion Consultancy. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm always around, genuinely on Facebook or wherever. You know, we've we've got quite a good following so far. And yeah,
perfect. Well, I've always wondered what your secret is, because the speed that you achieve stuff is amazing. So hats off to you. I now get it's coffee, because I can't believe how many people have bought you coffee while we've been sat here. So
I drink water, coffee, and alcohol. It's basically and if I don't have coffee, I have problems. So
next time I need to open another 8 restaurants in 9 weeks, I'm going to come and see your coffee supplier. But congratulations on what you've done. It's amazing.
Cheers.
I can't wait to come back and see. I'll be exhausted just watching you, but to come back in a year's time and see
really
what you've achieved.
I haven't seen you in ages.
Will be good. So no, it's been too long. So good luck with it, and we'll catch up again in we'll personally sooner, but maybe on the podcast in 12 months' time.
Whenever you want to, mate. Whenever.
Perfect. Thanks,
really
Andy.
good. Well done.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
So there you have it. You have reached the end of another episode of the Humans of Hospitality podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please go and visit our website, humansofhospitality.co.uk, for the show notes and extra episodes and information. And whilst you're there, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and to receive free materials all about the humans behind our incredible industry. Lastly, if you could subscribe, rate and review this podcast, you will be massively helping me out, and it would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much. We'll be launching another podcast in just 7 days' time. Cheers.